I think this is going to be an interesting topic for anyone who hasn't started out yet and is facing into their first day alcohol free. I just want to talk about my first day of stopping drinking alcohol and what you should really expect in a general way, what you can expect to happen on your first day. When I stopped on the 2nd of January, my first day free of alcohol was the 2nd of January. The day that I stopped drinking alcohol was the 1st of January 2013. Obviously, it wasn't my first day without alcohol. I'd had plenty of days where I didn't drink alcohol before, but it was my first day where I knew I wasn't going to drink again, or that was the aim anyway. So on the 1st of January, I had a drink at dinner time. I think I had a beer, and then we had a glass of wine to celebrate New Year's Day. We're in my sister's house, and I drank half of the wine, half the glass of wine, and I put it down and I didn't finish it. And that was because I knew I was going into this new journey, and I thought, what's the point? What's the point in having this now? What's the point in putting it into my head that I need to finish this? And essentially, what's the point in getting up the next day without a hangover? So I didn't start that first day alcohol free, my first day where I was completely without alcohol on this new journey with a hangover. And that was thanks to that decision the day before not to drink, or not to drink heavily, and to essentially put that glass of alcohol down. Really, it's like the first day of anything. You know, when you're doing anything and you're making a big change in your life, there's going to be a mixture of excitement about the change. I mean, if it's something that you want to do, and if you can see the possibilities in what you want to do, then there's going to be excitement. If you don't see the possibilities, if you don't see the potential in your life, then you're going to have much more fear than anything else. You're going to have fear of missing out. You're going to have fear of what you're going to do now. You're going to have fear of so many different things. But there's going to be a loss, a big loss in your life. I didn't see that. I saw the loss. I mean, there is ambivalence. There's going to be a conflict, but I didn't really see it because I saw how much alcohol or my alcohol behavior had been taken away from me. So I knew that I was going to gain more if I could just get myself out of this frame of mind, if I could get myself out of the habit, and if I could start living my life. I knew that as I was living, every time I tried to take a step forward, I was taking 2 steps back. So that was the mentality. And perspective always happens in retrospect. I mean, it's very difficult to see these things when you're going through them. You know, while you're drinking, it's very difficult to see the harm. I mean, you might understand the harm. It's very difficult to see the habit while you're in it. It's only oftentimes when you stop doing something and you can look back on those times. When you look back on your own past, for instance, then you get the biggest perspective and you start to see things from that position. There's a great book called A Man's Search for Meaning by a guy called Viktor Frankl. And in that book, he said that your suffering gets locked into your past. It becomes a part of your past, and it can never be taken away from you from that perspective. And I get what he means. It's like he's saying that, you know, the shit that has happened to you, when you're going through it, it's bad. It's, you know, you can feel sometimes that the suffering is terrible. But again, turn it up or you can turn it down in your own mind. But once you've gone through it, it's a part of your own identity. It becomes like a scar of living almost, you know. It's not only a scar. I mean, a scar is it's useful for showing to people, you know. Remember the scene in Jaws where they were comparing scars? This was from this was from that. It's a skill. It becomes a mental, you're expanding your discomfort zone. You're also expanding your comfort zone, but it gives you a mental framework for what you can put up with in life, because you can go back, you know, ask any woman who's gone through childbirth, and she'll tell you that she can put up with so much more after she's gone through that because she's experienced the suffering from that. Now that is with life. It's the same thing with this change that you're going to go through, all these changes that you go through, all the so-called suffering, the discomfort that you go through. It helps you to weather the storm later on in life. You know, looking back onto my own past, even the drunkenness to a certain extent, even that misery that you put yourself through, especially when you're coming out of the other end of it and going through the hangovers and the consequences and all the shit that you've, all the consequences of the crap that you pulled off. that drives you forward in a certain direction, or it can drive you forward. It can be used for that. You know, like I said, a lot of the suffering that you're going to go through is fake. It's made up in your own head, or it's increased in your own head. You know, the effect is amplified because of what you're doing, the thoughts that you're putting into this. But it is suffering. You know, it is a form of suffering. Again, it's perspective. You know, if you look at this as discomfort, if you say to yourself, look, this is all I'm going to go through is discomfort. There's nothing here that's going to kill me when I stop drinking. There's nothing that's going to do me any harm. It's going to be the opposite effect. It's going to do me good. And it's going to be a mental discomfort that I'm going to have to push myself through. You know, that discomfort of my brain trying to push me back to the old way of living because it's easier, you know. That's why I say that a lot of this journey is all about trying to get rid of the instant gratification mindset instead of the alcohol. You know, instead of the alcohol behavior, you're trying to get rid of that mindset, you know, that pushes you into getting out of your face or whatever it is that you're trying to, that medication mindset more than anything else. So just think about that. One of the things I remember reading from Freud was he said that in retrospect, it's the years of suffering that you're going to find the most beautiful when you're looking back on those things. You know, I don't think people understand the struggle from the beginning. They don't understand that in order to get through to the next stage, they've got to go through a certain amount of struggling. And that struggling is going to come in many forms. But I think for most people, it's in the form of discomfort. It's just not a massive struggle. You know, you can turn up the dial in your head, but you can also turn it down. When I look back at those first few months, I see a struggle, but it was more in the sense of being outside of my comfort zone. You know, it's like being in the bath where you let the water out the bath and there's nothing there, and you know, it just feels completely unnatural and uncomfortable to be there. You know, those first few months of that turning point where you're not your old self anymore, you're trying to get away from your old self, you're still in that old brain, but you're trying to move to the new self, and that's the tough part. Personally, I look at day one, and indeed, you know, the first week, the first month of this, as a time of switch over. It's when you're switching from your old habit into your old new habit, into your old way of looking at things, and gradually, and it can be slow and it can be anguishing, and there's a lot of discomfort in there, but it's switching and grinding your way into that new way of looking at things, and the way that's going to help you to see, to get the best possible bang for your buck in life, you know, to move towards a better version of yourself. That's all we're trying to do in these early few days, is to get to that better version of yourself. You know, when I'm thinking back to that first day, indeed the first few weeks, I wasn't lost. I didn't feel lost. That's probably not a right word for it, but there was a certain amount of that, but it's more hesitant, more uncertain about what I could see in the future. I mean, don't forget, everything that you're doing from day one onwards, when you stop drinking, is based on your own experience of what you've gone through in the past. So even though you might be facing into this and you might be saying to yourself, well, I'm not going to drink, even though you might have gone through days or weeks where you haven't drank before, it's not the same experience as facing into a life where you know you will not be drinking again. That's a different way of looking at things. It's a different mentality. It's a different level of, you know, you can have a different level of anxiety or fear that's attached to that. You know, like I said, a lot of it you're going to turn up yourself or you're going to turn down yourself. But there's also a lot of hope. There's a lot of wishing. There's a lot of assumptions that have been made as well. So there's a lot of this that is, you're trying to push yourself into that direction and try and see things, imagine things, how they are or how they can be. The potential is there, you know, and don't forget there's so much potential that you're opening up now because you're stopping drinking alcohol, and that all starts with this day one. You know, you're not going to get rid of all your entire drinking past. When I stopped, I had over 30 years of drinking behind me. So, and I wasn't going to get rid of that in one day or a week or a month or 6 months even, you know. It takes a lot longer than that, but it will get there. So you just have to persevere. I think you should really watch this video next on my first week. I made this after my first week of not drinking alcohol. Take care, onwards and upwards. Bye now.